This is the Motivator Show. This is our final review of the Catholic Church, led by Pope Leo XIV. Did he apologise to Pan-Africans for the enslavement of our African ancestors? Will we find in his encyclical, the public statement, the words, "I am deeply sorry for the Church's complicity in the enslavement of your ancestors. We ask for forgiveness and commit to justice, healing, and a new path forward together"? This question will be answered definitively in this episode of The Motivator Show.
I believe that my God-given image includes agency and the power of self-determination.
Yes.
And so my response first is to recall who I am, what I am, the fact that you bestowing upon me some sense that you recognize that I'm a human being is not something I'm going to thank you for, because that's something I have independent of you.
Absolutely.
Right. So if you have committed a crime, as the Catholic Church has, individuals and institutions, similarly...
Forgive me, Doctor. Can I just ask you to repeat that? You're asserting that the Catholic Church has committed a crime? It's so unclear.
The Catholic Church is admitting itself. So I'm simply regurgitating, but I believe it is true that the Catholic Church, individuals and institutionally, have committed crimes against Africans through, specifically linked to, the transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery, and the enslavement of what I think I just call their quote unquote what were they called? I'm trying to find my word. Quote unquote infidels.
Infidels, indeed.
Infidels.
Yes.
Infidels. I don't think that the Catholic Church disputes this. In fact, the encyclical admits it, that the Catholic Church, individuals and institutionally, have committed crimes against Africans through, specifically linked to, the transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery, and the enslavement of what I think I just call their quote unquote infidels.
Infidels, indeed.
Infidels. Infidels. I don't think that the Catholic Church disputes this. In fact, the encyclical admits it. The Church of England equally has admitted it too. So you're asking me what should be our response, and I'm saying that my first response is not to, in Gladys-like fashion, be so pleased that you have now recognized me, as if my recognition of my humanity depended upon you. No. I was always a human being, and you have infringed that humanity. Now, the conversation we need to have is, in my heart as a person, I don't go around holding you up, as we say in Jamaica, hold you up in my heart, right? Because otherwise, that means I can't breathe, right? I need to be able to go about my business. But whilst I'm not living every day thinking about the crime you've done against me, I'm actually living every day thinking about how I can build my own world, how I can build my life, or I can make the most of my life. I am from that position of strength, moral strength, and other kinds of strengths, going to say to you, I know, and you now admit, that you have stolen from me. There are some good examples in the scriptures that both as Christians, Catholic Christian, me as a Pentecostal Christian, kind of, would want to say, that when Zacchaeus came to Jesus by night, he had come seeking some word with Jesus, and basically recognizing that he had taken stuff, he had exploited people in his tax gathering. Not only was he collecting the money for the Roman government, the Roman Empire, but he was also taking too big a cut for himself. And he said, of his own volition, he said, I will give back what I have taken from the poor, right? The half of my goods I will give to the poor. That kind of reparation, that kind of willingness to make repair.
Before we continue, we ask for your support. If you believe in the mission of the Demotivator Show to inform, inspire, educate and empower the African diaspora and our friends around the world, please take a moment to like this video. Every like helps more people discover these important conversations. Leave a comment below. We read your views, your experiences and your suggestions, and they often help shape our future programs. If you've not already done so, subscribe to the channel. We are building a growing community of people committed to truth, self-determination, Pan-African progress, and a positive change. Please share this video with your family, your friends, your colleagues, your social media networks, and share could be the reason someone discovers information that changes their perspective forever. And finally, press the bell icon and select all notifications so you never miss an interview, analysis, a discussion, or a special broadcast. Thank you for your continued support. Together, we inform, inspire, and build a brighter future. Welcome to the Motivator Show.
A kind of willingness to recognize that the billions of euros or dollars or pounds that the Holy See sits on in Vatican City and around the world, the huge pension pots that they have and the Church of England has, that the money that built those up were not in small matters due to their ownership, their exploitation of enslaving my ancestors. So I think Jesus is
blood money.
Blood money. That engagement that Jesus had with Nicodemus, which I know was just one man, so I'm not saying it applies to the whole world, but that engagement with him gives us a little inkling about what it might mean to forgive. Because it's these warm words from the Pope, and that's for me what they are, these warm words, still has nothing in it of the Nicodemus effect. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. He begs my pardon. Okay. Can we now talk about...
I'm still going to focus on my questions. So the restitution will be that it is a formal apology, but a program of restitution is put in place as an acknowledgement of their, as it were, ill-gotten gains. Okay.
Yes, indeed.
I'm going to pause there on that particular question, because I'll be therefore asking for finer details on what that framework would look like that enables that restitution to take place. I won't pursue it, but I think there's you've acknowledged that in fact the apology isn't an apology, and what you're really saying is that it's the language should be clear. It is apology on behalf of the Catholic Church.
No, it should be clear, but it also should include. I am saying an apology is not an apology if it doesn't include making retribution.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Let me move this on. Because I want to just point out to you that
Retired Honorary President Judge Patrick Robinson of the American Society of International Law. Symposium held in 2021 to investigate the legal basis for the chattel enslavement of African peoples by European countries. Conclusion: customary international law from 1415 to 1815 did not condone the transatlantic chattel slavery trade. Retired Honorary President Judge Patrick Robinson of the American Society of International Law, second symposium held in 2023 to assess the reparations under international law. This conclusion is buttressed by the acknowledgement of the signatories of the 1815 Vienna Declaration that the commerce known by the name of slave trade has been considered by just and enlightened men of all ages as repugnant to the principles of humanity and universal morality. The American Society of International Law symposium held in 2023 assessed reparations under international law. The European nations involved in the transatlantic chattel enslavement of African peoples include Britain, Denmark, France, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, and the United States of America. The American Society of International Law symposium held in 2023 assessed reparations under international law, summary quantification of cost for the enslavement period. Foregone earnings, loss of liberty, personal injury, gender-based violence, mental pain and anguish, deprivation of citizenship, deprivation of family, and many other deprivations. Estimated quantifiable harm between 77 to $108 trillion. Post-enslavement period, loss of liberty, income disparity, unemployment, health care, compensatory payment for slavery, loss of life, difference in life expectancy, loss of heritage, feelings, international trauma, and many other issues. Estimated cost of $22.9 trillion. The American Society of International Law symposium held in 2023 assessed reparations under international law. Retired Judge President Judge Patrick Robinson says the UK is likely to owe more than £18 trillion in reparations for its historical role in slavery. A report co-authored by the judge, Patrick Robinson, says Britain should pay £18.8 trillion for its slavery involvement in 14 countries. But Judge Robinson says the sum is an underestimation of the damages caused by the slave trade. He said he's noted that some countries responsible for the transatlantic slave trade think they can bury their heads in the sand. Once a state has committed a wrongful act, it's obliged to pay reparations, said Judge Robinson, who presided over the trial of the former Yugoslav president. There have been earlier papal apologies. Okay, you might recall Pope John Paul II apologized for injustices committed by Christian Pope Francis. Yep, by Christians. Pope Francis apologized to Indigenous people in Canada. Yes. And Pope Leo, of course, apologized for the ODC.
The Dutch government done similar.
Yes, forgive me, you're quite right. What does this progression tell us about the church's evolving
understanding of its own history. Because that's what I found it to be a cute one, coming at this from politics, you see. The lack of understanding of one's own history is profound in this country. But in this case, the church is evolving understanding of its own history, its own involvement in the shattering enslavement of our ancestors.
Yes. Well, let me say I welcome it. Any repentant sinner, even if you've only done half the repent, is welcomed at the altar. I think it is a good thing that the Catholic Church now has a pope who willingly repeats history, and he does a pretty good job. Although this is a sideshow in the encyclical, but nevertheless, the allusions that he makes to the complicity of the Catholic Church in the history of slavery is welcome. I don't think it is divorced from the efforts which have been made by many down the centuries. We run the risk in the abolition of slavery of crediting the likes of Wilberforce and and ignoring the many black liberators.
That's right.
Who burnt down estates.
Absolutely, yes.
Killed some of their masters, many of whom were then killed in the most brutal ways.
That's right.
Once they were found.
That's right.
And very often, this is a bit graphic, but I read somewhere that one of the ways in which the slave owners used to try to set an example to others is that they would get one of these ringleaders, they would get 4 horses, and they would tie one arm to one horse, the other arm to the other horse, one leg to the other horse, and a fourth leg to a fourth horse. And then they would drive them in 4 different directions so that the poor victim at the center of that is completely split apart, right? And basically, that's after everybody come to watch, forced to watch, because that tells you, don't try anything. Mm-hmm. The point I'm making, otherwise that will be your end. The point that I'm making is that I am not willing to allow, I'm not willing to give my people's glory to another. That's really what I am saying here.
Indeed.
And I don't think my Christian faith should encourage me down that way. So what I am looking for is not being overexcited about, a pope standing up and saying this. What I am looking for is, how have we got here? And I would suggest we've got here through the sacrifices of many people who, when they were discovered, were killed for their being willing to be so audacious, right? And over the last few years, we've seen people willing to come up with ideas about how some form of repayment for what has been done may be done. So again, preparing for today, I was looking at some of the people who have been working. We know about the University of the West Indies and the CARICOM 10-point plan, but there are other such plans going on. There are some grassroots one. I went on a march many years ago by some Rastafarians. I'm kind of a bald-head Rasta myself, but by some Rastafarians who march from Brixton. I think they do it every year, to hand a petition to Number 10. All right. These guys have been doing what they've been doing. People like Esther Stanford have been campaigning for years. And some of us, I wrote a short article in one of my books called Thinking Outside the Box. I gave a talk up north somewhere. I can't even remember the place. And it was 2007 when I speculated in that short article that the government might put up 10 million, which is the 20 million, the amount that they paid to the slave owners in 1804, and should use that as a kind of a seeding for a few. I mean, I wrote that back then. I was quarreling about it, campaigning about it then, and many other people have done far more than I have in that area. So now that we have a pope rooted in Latin America who is closer to these things, really, in historically, I mean, closer to these things, who now goes further in acknowledging the wrong that is at the Catholic Church's door. And now we have a Church of England who is saying they're prepared to put £100 million towards this same kind of a project, even though they don't want to call it reparations. And now we've got some banks also piling in. I am saying those actions have not happened by themselves. They have happened because of the fertile ground that has been being prepared over many years by many people, saying, hey, the problems we have are rooted in what you did to us.
Absolutely.
And, I saw Jeremy Corbyn making a plea many years ago and making the case for why Britain should treat Jamaica differently. Many people don't know, but he studied in Jamaica for a short while. Back in the younger days, and he was making that plea anybody who looks at it have to say that if you now have 100 acres of land that you're planting and selling and living by, and you got it by killing somebody else whose relatives live across the road, are you going to continue on forever and a day, pass it on to your benefactors, your children and their children, and not recognize that the poor people across the way, actually, this was their land before you took it? Well, hear me with my last piece of Joseph Aldridism. I know that although the Bible talks a lot about justice, the example of justice in the Bible, people forget this, don't see it. But I see it, and I'm telling it now. Mm-hmm. Justice in the Bible, which the Jews were accused of not doing justice to the poor, to the widow, to the stranger. And that if the prophets told them, if they didn't do justice and some other things, God would send them into exile. Do you know what happened to them? They went into exile. Why? Because they did not do justice. So I remind people that don't just go telling me that the Bible demands justice. Learn as well that the lesson from the Bible is that though demanded by God, it is rarely ever done.
That's right. That's right.
And what does that tell me? That tells me that the poor man across the road has to find a way somehow of becoming strong to the point where the guy living in the big house on the land he stole from your forefathers and mothers is made so uncomfortable, psychologically, economically, and in every other way, because you've grown strong in those areas, that you make their lives a misery.
Yep.
Until they do right. That's the response.
In that case, I hear you, and it kind of neatly takes me on to my next point, because we've talked about what restitution should be, but apology without restitution, what you're referring to. Mm-hmm. But the Vatican has consistently offered apologies while stopping short of financial reparation, which we've just discussed, okay? Arguing that repentance should lead to more conversion rather than monetary compensation. From a biblical perspective, is repentance complete without some form of restitution?
No, is the answer.
Okay. Right, that's what I want to hear. That was a very direct answer. I can almost accept that and move on, but I know you want to add to that. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, the answer is no. We talked about Zacchaeus a while ago, but we see that throughout Scripture. As I said, justice is rarely ever administered, and God nearly always, within the context of the Bible, have to punish those who were supposed to deliver justice because they don't. So it is telling us that actually we must deliver on what it is that we need to make right. We need to deliver on it. And I don't know what the various modes. I noticed. I'm trying to remember his name now. A judge. I've forgotten his name. Hopefully, he'll come back to me. Who is taking issue with the CARICOM 10-point plan, because his argument is that the 10-point plan is not sufficiently rooted in the legalities of the times in which the crimes occurred, right? And that's what you have to do. That, for me, is a highly biblical thing, that you find what's the root of the problem. The whole gospel story is about rooting out sin and the desire to sin, rooting that out so that you can live a just life, or at least, if you can't root it out, be aware of it, that it is there and that you need to come back.
But if I may, and forgive you for interrupting you, but repentance should lead to moral conversion rather than monetary compensation, should it not? That moral conversion, if we want that change in behavior, the fundamental behavior which caused the sin. No? Oh,
right. My friend Dr. David Muir, known to some, is famed for saying, money is a sacrament of commitment.
Oh. Okay. Is there a biblical reference you can use to that? Can you apply to this, please? I hear you, but is there a biblical reference? Can you refer to a chapter, a verse in the Bible that supports that statement?
I'm sure in time I will. Okay. But none comes to mind at the moment as I talk to you. But I'm quoting the source. No doubt he got it from somewhere else. And if I can think of a biblical, except that I am suggesting to you that the weight of biblical evidence heavily suggests that justice must be delivered. And justice, where we talk about it, if you steal, the Bible is very clear that you should return. Old and New Testament, you should return ill-gotten gain.
Yes.
Right? So the idea that somehow you have and you live on and live by ill-gotten gain, and your moral conversion stops at mere words of being sorry, but you continue to exploit and to live off and to benefit from what you got by ill? I don't think so. So I am very clear in my mind, and that's why I am probably less impressed by Pope Leo's words, having read them time and again, as I have done over the last days preparing. And I'm thinking, yes, it does go in some ways further to owning. Well, I'm saying there's still a step further to take, my dear beloved Pope Leo XIV. And that is where you don't you don't regard the money under your seat as in some way the idol that must not be touched, because it is part of the problem.
Thank you. That's very clear. That's very clear. I just want to take us forward. So Pope Leo XIV indeed has linked the historical slave chattel enslavement of our ancestors to the modern forms of exploitations. And you hinted at this at the beginning, including the digital exploitation, which you mentioned, forced labor. How should churches today ensure they never again become silent in the face of systems that deny human dignity?
I think by being very conscious that Christianity is a life lived here. I fear sometimes there's too much emphasis placed on the hereafter. None of us know what that is about. None of us know. There are some little hints in Scripture, but nobody has been there, right? Jesus in the Bible has, but none of us mere humans have been there. So I think we need to recognize that the life we live here is God's plan for us, and we need to live it happily and flourishingly, and it also needs to be lived responsibly, so that those who are in difficulties, we see them as part of us, an extension of us, and therefore not just helping to eat for today, but helping people up on their feet to be empowered to look after themselves using their agency and their sense of self-determination. Churches need to be less heavenly minded and more earthly good, if I may put it that way. And there's an old song when I was growing up. We used to sing, everywhere he went, he was doing good. This was a little song about Jesus. He had the attitude to feed the multitude everywhere he went, and so on. That's the example to me of Jesus. That's an appropriate example of Jesus. Somebody performing miracles to feed the poor, to feed when people say send them away. Say no, they're hungry. They need to be fed. Some could accuse him of, I might even do, if I dare, of not being sufficiently interested in tearing down the Roman Empire. But maybe there's a lesson there as well, right? That empires
I'm not going there for the moment.
empires come and empires go, and actually what you don't do is get rid of empire, because actually when you tear this one down, another one take its place. So maybe Jesus was onto a thing there by saying, no, what I want to show you is how to be empowered within the structure that you find yourself, because you can actually. So I think churches should be more earthly minded. We should look at the challenges. We should see. And my own tradition is really guilty of this sin. The sin of believing, I think it is a sin, of believing that the only responsibility we have is for what is called the saving of souls. And by use of the word soul in that regard, it doesn't seem to mean me here and now. It doesn't seem to mean me in the here and now. It means that there is this soul that is within me that must make sure that it inherits life after this one. Well, that's all well and good. I'm signed up to that. But right now, I am alive here. And the example we have of Jesus in the scriptures is of somebody who was very engaged with the people around him. The woman caught in adultery, people getting ready to stone, he confounded them by saying, well, any one of you that don't have a sin, you cast the first one. And the person by the water who couldn't help himself, Jesus, take up your bed and walk, right? Go and look after yourself. Jesus was somebody who's left an example for us of a ministry right here among people who need, and amongst those who can help us to deliver that ministry, not just focused on the hereafter. In fact, why would you want to worry about the hereafter? Jesus says, I'm going to prepare a place for you. And him gone clear on that one, right? He is there looking after it. It's not something I don't have to build it. He's going to build it. So what I need to build is a life here that follows as closely as I can the principles which Jesus teach. And also we see many of those principles in other faiths as well. The idea of loving your neighbor as you love yourself. That's my long answer to your short question.
No, it is well, and I'll let you do that because it was clear, and I'm sure that many who are watching this will get their Bibles out and look up those references to affirm your word. And I want to further affirm your word. And I now need to refer to a church older than the Catholic Church, and that's of course the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Yep. Mm-hmm. Teaches from Genesis in their Bible, chapter 1, 26 to 27, that every human being is created in the image and likeness of God. How could any Christian authority justify reducing people made in God's image to perpetual slavery? Now, this question seems to be, for me, of all the questions I've asked, the most fundamental. It simply does not compute, which is why you have so much difficulty with some of the churches. It just simply does not compute. How could a pope sanctify the families who own the ships? They sanctify the ships and go on to sanctify the sailors. Yep. And then go on to sanctify the acts of the non-Christians, of engaging in chattel enslavement, debasing those human beings. So I ask this question of you, because you're a learned man. Okay? I don't consider myself to be learned. I can study well, but the contradictions are abound. Okay? And I've not yet heard a satisfactory response to that contradiction. And I just for the benefit of the audience, I want to say it again. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church teaches from Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 27, that every human being is created in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, how could any Christian authority justify reducing people made in God's image to perpetual slavery? How would you respond as a man of God?
Well, from what I think I know, the root of the legitimization was to pronounce those people infidels, not human. And once you make them in your mind and in your philosophical framework chattel, then they are things, right? And so you can justify what you then do once you have made that leap.
An infidel is a person who does not believe in religion or follows a different religion than the one being spoken about.
And we know that
the word comes from the Latin term meaning unfaithful.
Excuse me for interrupting.
Infidel's secular definitions. Marital infidelity. The root word directly connects to cheating, where an infidel is a person who breaks a vow of marriage or commitment, or political traitor. Historically, it describes citizens who were unfaithful to their government, king, or country.
That you could apply.
Ideological rebels. It describes someone who rejects a widely accepted theory, philosophy, or political party doctrine.
I smile as I'm trying to rack my brain to see if there's another word. I'm sure if I had time.
Someone is an infidel is no longer human. Okay.
Yes,
I know fascists, for example, in order to justify their behaviour, particularly in Germany and other places, have reduced people to less than human and applied them so that they were subhuman. Okay,
yes.
That they were degenerates. That they were less than, or in the American Constitution, of course, where the fascists were able to reign, that those who were enslaved were 2/3 of a man, of a human being, for example.
Indeed. You've done it.
Secular, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you've done it for me. Thank you. The once you've done that, of course, then you do what you do. Hitler can kill how many millions, and the slave traders can kill how many millions, because what they're killing, and so desensitized were the consciences of some of these folks that they could be worshiping Jesus on upstairs, whilst the slaves, their slaves, the enslaved, were downstairs
Indeed.
in the
Yes.
dungeon
Yes.
with no toilet facilities, no fresh air, no. But they, so that's, one thinks of that picture at Elmina, I think, where, and no doubt other places where that was the scene. Well, that tells you that people were following. I think the Bible talks about having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. I think that's a
Yes.
classic case of people saying that they are Christians, but what they were following were not Christ. Absolutely not. But that brings me to another adjacent point, you see, which is to say this: we mustn't be too willing to put ourselves at the mercy of somebody else's professed faith.
Okay.
Um, Again, going back to the Bible, without being too specific, by their fruits you shall know them.
Yes.
So it isn't that I say that I'm a follower of Christ. It is when you look at me and when you observe me, do I, in my dealings with you, portray that? Now, I would say that what we found down the years, and again in my last book, I touch on this a little bit. I'm kind of outside ministry ranks now, so nobody can't do anything to me, right? So but I am saying that when you believe that God is going to come and help you, and therefore you don't need to help yourself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
therein lies one of
Yes.
the biggest cons, I think, for which we have fallen, not just today, but I think back then too. And the people who saw through that were the people who were willing to rise up in those ships and to say, no,
Absolutely.
no.
Yeah.
Now, I argue, you see, and in the Pope's latest encyclical, he does actually say this, and I agree with him, that nobody can take away your image, your God imageness. The
Right.
encyclical actually says this. Nobody can take away. So no matter how a person may try to degrade me, the fact that I am a person made in the image of God remains. Now, what I am saying to folks is don't wait for somebody else, which is basically my argument about my response to the Pope's apology or asking for pardon. I am not waiting for you to validate me as a human being. Also, I am noting that God almost universally, when God is said to do something in Scripture, there's human action
Yes.
that actually carried out that thing, right?
Absolutely.
So there are a few examples which don't necessarily
Mm-hmm.
follow that script, but essentially, God works through you and through me. Somebody has once coined the phrase that we are God's arms and God's legs,
Yes.
and God, in making us after His image, give us a thinking brain. We keep
Absolutely.
talking about the heart, but that's the pump down here. The brain is given. So when we find ourselves in difficult corners, what we don't do is kneel down and pray and say, "Oh God, help me." That's what you don't do. And then act as though God is going to mysteriously fix your situation. No, from experience and from observation and from what I read in the scriptures, what God seems to do for us, if we are aware of it, is give us the strength, give us the vision, the sense, the intuitive to help ourselves. I think one of the biggest mistakes, and I think we still continue to make it now, even when we talk about racism in society. It is as though some people want us to believe that we can't succeed until racism is no more. Or, God is going to somehow, God is miraculously going to change these people's minds. Look at Doreen Lawrence and her family.
Yeah.
And you look at what has happened with her, what she has shown us. I'm sorry, Doreen, if you're watching this, I mean you well. What she has shown us is to get justice. You don't just stay in church and pray on a Sunday. You have to get out and pursue justice. And so I wonder how many of my enslaved ancestors thought that what they should do at those times was to pray. Rather than
I think you made the point now. I think you made that point. And if I may just again a further quote from the Ethiopian Bible, Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. It proclaims, there is neither Jew or Greek, for you're all one in Christ Jesus. Now, does this passage leave any biblical basis for enslaving another people because of their ethnicity, religion, geographic origin? And if not, how should Christians interpret the papal bulls that authorized such practices? I know you responded to part of this previously, but I want to re-emphasize the point. Please, go ahead.
I am saying that the fact that as somebody says, I do this in the name of God, does not mean it is in the name of God.
But a pope, though? A pope, the leader? Forgive me, if a bishop made a statement, the adherents would want to follow. If a pope makes such a statement, the adherents wants to follow. If the archbishop here in Britain wants to make the adherents want to follow. Well,
so
come on now.
Let's go back to the point that we've been making. Each of us is made in the image of God. Indeed. Each of us. At the atomic level, I am a person. One of the big tasks that we have, and I try to do it every day I live, is to explain to people that you have autonomy.
Right.
Now, it's important that we bring all those different atoms into.
I don't mean to. Again, I don't mean to interrupt you because I know you just about to get your flow. Sure. But autonomy, it's recognised, but the adherents are obedient. They trust. They believe. So there's a tension in those two statements, is there not?
Of course there is. Which is why I'm bringing people back to you as an individual, I as an individual, we have autonomy. You and I are working together on this podcast, right? Where we brought both our individualities into the room. And you could bring more people and you have a bigger crowd. But at base, I am me and you are you. Therefore, you are made in the image and likeness of God with creativity, with intuition, with the ability to do stuff, right? And therefore, I am not, let me personalize it, I am not just a subject of my pastor's preaching. And I'm waiting to hear from him about what the Lord has told him to tell me. I actually have a direct route to God as an individual made in the divine image, right?
Again, I don't mean to interrupt you. I know I'm interrupting you on this occasion, but I need to get to this one because this is pretty fundamental stuff here. You want us, therefore, to defy the bishops, to defy the archbishop, to defy the pope. If what is being asked of us, we believe ourselves to be contrary to God's word, where these people are there, part of that institution, to be closer, he says, to God, and they know of his word clearly.
My answer to your question, again, is very much a one-word yes, is my answer to that question. who should we obey? God.
Yes.
God, right? And God, we have the scriptures, Ethiopian Bible, King James, some big differences, some not so big differences, but we get the picture, right? We get the picture of what the Bible is trying to tell us. So therefore, I do not need, I see people being exploited all the time, particularly in my branch of the church, in Pentecostalism. I know it happens in other places too. That's why we had the Reformation, right? Because of the exploitation that was going on largely. But I see people now being exploited. I was at a conference and I saw this well-known preacher finishing his stint and saying to people, I'm inviting you now to sow a seed in my ministry, right? In inner city Birmingham, poor people. And he said, I'm starting the giving at £1,000. Those who want to sow a seed of £1,000 come and there was a little queue. I turned to the good lady who was standing next to me in the corridor. I said, aren't you going to sow your seed? And she said, I'm still paying off the last seed I sowed. Right?
Yes.
Too many of us are the victims of those who seem to want to convey to us that they are not just made in the image of God, but they are God, right? Somehow you are not the same image as me. You've got to come through me. So if you want to prosper, you've got to give me money. Well, what's going on here? I'm afraid we have lost out as a people, particularly my people. Right? They're so religious. We are so religious that it's not good for us anymore. We need to rediscover this self, the humanity made in the image of God, and stop being fodder for people who find us nothing more than their marketplace. This is where they make their money. And so coming back to the Pope, we must, because I am made in the image of God, when I'm reading what the Pope has said, I'm reading it with my mind. I'm reading it with my God imageness. I am, the Bible, the early
Yes.
the early chapters of Genesis tell us about God going into the garden and saying, Adam, where are you? Where are you? Gonna look for it. We must look for our Adams in what people are telling us, and stop simply as being deferential. One of the joys of being not a bishop, right? People still call me bishop, right? Even though 6 months in of dropping it, and they say, "Well, we've always known you as a bishop." But this has been a bishop who, even during my 30-odd years of being a bishop, was saying to folks, "You need to know God for yourself. You need to understand your own theology. You need to develop a theology of yourself." We were all born somewhere, and I said I was born into the Church of God of Prophecy. Other people are born into Baptist, and people, da 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 da. But as we grow up, we must make sense of the world in which we find ourselves. And we must not be so deferential to any human being. I don't care what the title is, bishop, archbishop, pope, whatever the title. That person standing there is another human being who has a vocation that they are carrying out. So have I, and so have you. And so some of us, we can enrich each other. Of course we can. But I should not become so I'm hanging on your last word, as though I am not also a human being made in the image and likeness of God.
Mm-hmm. If I may just add this to you in that case, and I'm conscious that the vast majority of the audience accept your ability to be, if I may use the term, independently minded and take power for yourself. That's accepted, okay? But the vast majority of people want framework structure, some sense of certainty. And if I may refer again to the Ethiopian Bible, to the book of Jubilees, which is not in the general canons across Europe, which is books generally are being used by these other churches. Preserved in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo canon, teaches that all nations descend from one creator and one human family. In the light of Pope Leopold XIV's apology, or not, what role can the Ethiopian Orthodox Church play reminding the wider Christian world that Scriptures never sanctioned racial hierarchy or the enslavement of one people by another? I know you're not a member of the church. I understood that,
Sure.
but you emphasized at the beginning of our dialogue that you understood the principles and had some sympathy.
No, indeed. Of course, my sympathy begin with the fact that that's a Christian church rooted in Africa as opposed to rooted in the southern United States,
and established before the Catholic Church was established.
Absolutely. It goes right back to the very, very, very beginning. But that sentiment that you stated there of all belonging to the same human root.
Yes,
and therefore, how can a set of people carry out some, the atrocities that they have, are not other human beings?
A church sanction it, yes.
Saying that they are not Christian, and then the church sanctifies it. I think the root of it is in canonicity of Holy Writ. The idea that a lot of churches propagate is to restrict you in what you can read.
Indeed, yes.
So, there was a time when for most churches, including the one I belonged to, the King James Bible was the only one that you must read, right? In my book,
and if I may, forgive me, Doctor, at this point, just again for the benefit of remind the audience, the King James Bible is a Bible that was written by Henry VIII, I believe, and it's desired for another life.
It wasn't written by King James.
But his chaplain. Indeed, I'm just using that as a historical marker.
Yes,
it was him. It was England separating themselves from the control of Rome that refused him the opportunity to marry again. And it was his defiance that created, that resulted in the so-called King James Bible.
Which is why, the Church of England still, the monarch still, through the Prime Minister, still has to sanction, approve.
I just need to emphasize that point. Yes,
so on. But the point about canonicity has been used by churches to limit the realms of people's willingness to read. Because it's almost as though, when I was growing up in Jamaica, there were Rastas in Top Mountain, right? There was an Obeah man up there as well. But the Rastas were very often fond of saying to us, coming from church with our Bible, you don't have the right Bible. Right? You don't have the right Bible. And very often they weren't talking about necessarily the Ethiopian Bible, but they were talking about the fact that there were Bibles with other books in them. Whether it's the Jubilees or Tobit or Maccabees or what have you. And it's taken me a long time. My wife and I read through the extra canonical books. That, yes, indeed. I told you that we kind of worked together. We spent several, probably took us months actually to read through it together in morning devotion, something we don't do enough of these days, I find. But we read through it. People don't know this, but if you buy a Catholic Bible, it's got the deuterocanonical books in there. And if you buy any of the Orthodox churches, of which the Ethiopian Orthodox is one, those books are there as well. And I say to people, in fact, last week when I was speaking at a funeral, I teased my congregation. I was talking before we came on air. I was talking about me speaking from the 23rd Psalm. One of the things that I said to them about, in addition to walking through the valley of death, meaning get exercise, keep fit as you go through this place, I also reminded my audience that there is, whilst the book of Psalms is 150 chapters long, there is 151st chapter, which you will find in the Ethiopian Bible. Afterwards, at the eatings that followed, one person said to me, he said, I could feel the congregation had a simultaneous holding of breath when you mentioned the Ethiopian Bible. But such is the way we have been domesticated to believe.
That's right. Domesticated, the correct term. Forgive me. Go ahead. Keep going.
Indeed, to believe that though a grown person, I have a PhD, right? I'm 73, and a church should have the power to tell me I can't read this. What's that? What is that about? So I'm not actually encouraging rebelliousness. What I'm encouraging is each of us. You said a while ago, quite rightly, that it may be okay for bumptious me to say I can read what I like. But for some people, that's not so easy to do. But I am still encouraging those people, because I believe that my role and your role is to empower people. It's not just to give them food for a day. It's to empower them to have food every day. That's what we are. And therefore, I am unashamed when I say to people, no, I don't care which church you go to, right? You should never be more advanced in your secular life than you are in your religious life.
Oh, say that again. Oh, please say that again. And we need to understand what you mean by that.
You should never be more advanced in your secular life than you are in your religious or faith life. Because faith has put a boundary on you and tied you so that you can't go beyond the reach of that rope and the stake that they've put in the ground on your behavior. And I actually believe that churches would benefit where people are, you have some medical doctors, right? They're medical doctors in their secular life, but in their faith, they're like little babies.
Yes.
Because they have never felt empowered to explore faith. They simply take by what's been handed to them by rote, imbibe it, and keep looking up to the preacher.
Yes.
And yet there's a brain there that has got around understanding science to the degree that you're now either a GP or you're a specialist, and yet your faith is still at ABC. That is part of our problem, and that is what allows people to take advantage of us in our faith life.
Yes. Well said. Well said. Well said. Well, no. Well said. Well said. I suppose before we conclude, it should be noted that, of course, the Christendom or Catholic Catholicism, from which all these other churches have come from, of course, started off life under Emperor Constantine to create the Holy Roman Empire, and Christian. The early Bible was used as a means of political, indeed social control, and it is that tradition that continued within the Catholicism and many of its branches. Now that's my analysis. Is that really your analysis?
Mine. I mean, I can see where that's coming from, but I prefer to couch my Christian faith within the realm of something started by Jesus Christ and the disciples he had around him, which then spread and which developed. And by the way, when one reads, a book like the Didache, for example, which tells us something about, they think maybe around Syria, Christians around Syria were the people who produced the Didache, which is a teaching about the Christian life, as well as many other books that are there. My tradition used to say, and many still do, that God felt silent for 400 years between Malachi and Matthew, right? Now, we know, for example, that is not true. The reality is God never stops talking. And, and so the Maccabees, for example, which happened during that period, and other stuff that were written, why would we not want to credit that to God still speaking, right? So I couch my understanding of faith not as something that has its roots in 400 AD and Constantine. Of course, Constantine had a major influence, mainly by being able to convene councils to try to resolve stuff, right? It's a bit like King James. King James is often credited with writing the Bible. He never wrote a single letter in the Bible. What he had, it was
that's more than 1,000 years thereafter, sir. That's more than 1,000 years thereafter. But focus on Emperor Constantine, though.
I am sorry for my indiscipline. I was simply making the point that we have a similar misdemeanor going on, a misunderstanding by people saying, well, Constantine was the one who did this. Constantine had the power to convene the Council of Nicaea. Yeah, and things happened there. Some of the things
in
that people
his
said,
name. In his name.
Yes, you could say yes. Okay. Indeed,
that's what I was. And I don't want to get into the weeds of this one because it is interesting. I deliberately put it in because, of course, so the Catholic tradition is about social control and therefore limiting access to various passages within the Bible as they dictated, which is why it is the number that it is. Of course, the Ethiopian tradition was different. There's a different parallel path, which is clearly far more open and allows greater personal connection with.
And they talk about 88 or 89 books.
There you go. Yeah. And the relationship with God. That's right. And the relationship with God is therefore intimate and much closer. And for us, as particularly African peoples, it's one that we'll find great kinship with if given the opportunity to be exposed to it.
Yes.
I'm just conscious that those traditions run in parallel at the moment, and we've talked about them. But I want to draw us to a close now. This has been such a pleasure. It's gone over my original time, but you've been a student in intellectual stimulation here, and I want you just, if I may, ask you to wrap up what we've discussed thus far into maybe a few sentences, which are designed to enable the audience to take away either some homework for personal development, which is always a good thing I find, okay? But but the action is clear that they've heard from you, heard from us, and now there's work to do. What work do they have to do so that we can develop this dialogue to a much wider audience?
I would like to encourage people to expand their canon, their reading base, their library. I would encourage people to dig deep into whichever denomination you happen to be part of. Get to understand it. Don't fear it. Understand it. And if you find stuff which you find problematic, then find a way of dealing with that. In some cases, it may mean that you leave. But in some cases, it may be that you simply stay where you are, but with a different understanding. And you stand in a different posture within where you are. So I'm using the word canon, that which is authorized. For the Protestant churches, mostly whatever was left after Luther and the Reformers had their say. You had the 66 books. But I'm saying, as we've pointed out, the Ethiopian Bible, 88, 89 books. And there are many other books beyond that. There's the Book of Thomas, the book of Mary Magdalene. I'm saying expand your canon. Don't let your secular self be more informed than your faith self. That's a big take home that I want to give to people. Beyond that, I would say, well, maybe not beyond, but alongside that, I would want to encourage people to build strong selves, build strong selves. Build yourself strong. See yourself as somebody made in the image and likeness of God, without apology, without anybody else's say so. I don't care who you are. You, like me, are made in the image of God. So you're not looking to me to authorize you. Don't look to me to think that you are going to validate me. Not at all. So I want people to see the value of themselves, and that does not take away from what we are as a community.
Indeed.
But what we should be in community is a gathering of these robust, self-assured individuals that know who they are, know their history the best they can, understand the kind of sociology of religion and why it is that there are these 20,000 different denominations and why they all say that they're right, and you just happen to be captured by one who tells you that they're right. To know, don't believe them, right? Recognize that, do not believe them. None of them is right. They all have something to share, and so pay them equal respect or disrespect, but be that person. Those are the two things I'd want people to go away with. Beefing up the me and the you. You are the image of God. You have agency to act, and you have self-determination to determine the course that you take.
Oh, that was wonderful. Can I, before we go, I want to go back to your union with your wife. And I just want to ask you, please. I say please because there are so many people out here who look at you with great admiration. Is there a secret to the union that lasts more than 50 years? What would you say to the masses? And I say the masses because it's clearly the majority these days, which is a sad statement to make, I know. But I know that my discussions with my audience suggest that there's a real desire to better understand why we're in these circumstances. So a person of your standing, with the evidence that you've been able to maintain that relationship for more than 50 years, we want to know and understand you better.
I've said to folks that we got married so young, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, and we're still trying to find out.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's one. Put that down there. I sometimes I think we've just been lucky, and I know luck doesn't seem to rank well in the area of faith, but in some respects, I mean, I know so many people who are people of faith, as I try to be, who are on their second or third marriage, So it can't just be because my faith is good. That's really what I mean. So sometimes I think that we've just been lucky. But I can certainly name, 2 or 3 things that I have found to be important. One would be a willingness to say sorry.
Right.
I would say, one of my pet phrases, that love is not enough.
All right. Explain that one. I know there are many who want to hear that explanation.
You need commitment, because there will be times when love doesn't feel terribly loving. There'll be times when, through sickness, my wife has just gone through treatment for cancer. The last 2 years have been pretty tough. The commitment that says we are a unit, means that for me, when that hits, I say, I'm in lockstep with you. We're going to walk through this. And we have been, and thankfully, things are better with her. So love is not enough. Commitment has to be right there with it. There's no question we love each other. I still remember seeing her in the church. I spotted my wife first in the church hall during a revival service. And she had this lovely hat, or more like a cap on, with blue and white, I think it was. I love blue. And I remember seeing this beautiful person, and I fixed up with somebody else to get us to meet. At that time, I was about 18. She was still a schoolgirl, so I still remember. So it was, for me, love at first sight. It took her a little bit longer, but there's no question about the love. But if you don't have the love, then the commitment. If you don't have the commitment to go along with the love, then in tough times you might walk away. But those two things. So love and commitment going together. A willingness to say sorry. And maybe if I should find a third one, it is to say romance in the narrow and wide sense. Keep that alive. Ooh. So we've been in the habit, for example, since we were able to afford it, of popping off for weekends. When the plan was working, it was a weekend away every quarter and a proper holiday abroad once a year. Doesn't always work. And making sure that we, big dates, birthdays, anniversaries, and so on, we're there, right?
Yes.
So yes, it's kind of keeping, I said, romance both in narrow and the broad sense, keeping that alive, bringing flowers home, buying a little present here or there, and doing things, and encouraging that, keeping that flame, if you like, alive. Many ways. People think of romance sometimes only in the sense of sex. It's much broader than that. So romance, love is not enough, need commitment, and learning to eat humble pie when you need to and say sorry.
I hear you on that. I hear you. Thank you. You've been truly an outstanding guest here. You've shared a great deal. We've all learned a great deal from you. We want to thank you very much for being an outstanding guest. And if you don't mind, I want to be a little child of frivolity. You know me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's the Motivator here. I hope you enjoyed that fantastic podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, or at the very least, give us a like. And don't forget the next video on screen. Click through and enjoy.